analyst with L&P Services. L&P is a leading provider of ethical investment products within the Irish context, and we've worked very closely with Ian over the past year in order to look at where there's opportunities also within the Irish market for fossil-free investment products. Ian is on the board of the Ecumenical Council for Corporate Responsibility, and is going to speak to us today about the financial perspective of divestment from fossil fuels and investment. So Ian, over to you.
Thanks very much, Lorna. I'm just going to share my screen here so I can bring up the presentation that I'm going to do. So hopefully everyone can see that now. As Lorna had said, I'm an investment consultant and associate director with L&P Investment Services. We specialize in providing investment advice for charities, religious organizations, or pension funds, particularly in the area of divest, invest, or people who are interested in environmental, social, and governance factors. I've been asked to speak today about the financial aspect of divest, invest, and I've been given 5 minutes. So I'd like to address 5 key points and bring those across to you within that 5-minute schedule. So hopefully I'll be able to stick to that. It's quite a heroic task, but I'm sure I'll be able to manage. First and foremost, the first thing to mention to you, there's a number of different reasons why you would divest from fossil fuel companies and invest in climate solutions. And we divide those, when we think about them, into push factors, things that are pushing you out of fossil fuel companies, and pull factors, things that are pulling you into a fossil fuel free or positive impact, climate impact portfolio. On the push factor side, we would be probably the primary thing that is pushing you out of it, or pushing investors out of fossil fuel portfolios, as Tina had mentioned earlier, is the fact that there's a risk around you being invested in stranded assets. 80% or up to 80% of the fossil fuel reserves that listed oil, gas, and coal companies have on their books at the moment won't be able to be burnt if we have to stand a chance of keeping climate change, the rise in temperatures, to 2 degrees. So therefore, that's a real risk for investors. If they are looking to reduce risk in their portfolio, they should be reducing or eliminating their holdings of fossil fuel companies. And that's purely from an investment viewpoint, nothing about the moral case there. There's also a number of different campaigns going on, obviously the webinars like this, discussions like the Laudato Si discussion, Divest-Invest 350.org, Troca's campaign in Ireland, that are also giving investors pause about continuing to invest in fossil fuel companies. And as we continue with these discussions, as we bring forward more and more discussions around the dangers of investing in fossil fuel companies, and also the moral case for moving out of them, people who remain in them, and this is particularly true for charities and religious orders, anyone who remains in fossil fuel has a rising or faces a rising danger of reputational damage to their brand or to their organization from continuing to invest. As society gets more awareness, as more and more people become aware of what is happening and these issues around climate change and fossil fuel free and divest, invest, there'll be more pressure from society, from stakeholders, so donors maybe for charities, or recipients for pension funds, that will be also contacting their investor providers and saying you need to move out of these things. And then there's also a big regulatory push as well. There's an EU pensions directive, and the Financial Stability Board are also pushing at investors to move out. Looking then at the pull factors, performance. Some investment managers think that performance will actually be better with fossil fuel free or divestment campaigns, and they're moving in that direction, irrespective of any moral case. There's obviously an enhancement of reputation and a possibility of engaging with stakeholders that see this as an issue as well, if charities or if investors in general move in this direction. And of course, there's the whole moral case as well. So the second point I'd like to drive home to you is that every penny that is committed to divestment, and every penny that is committed to invest in climate solutions makes a difference. And that is because it alters the relative costs between fossil fuel investments and climate solution investments. Every word that we speak at a conference like this, every investment that's made into fossil fuel-free investments pushes up the cost of fossil fuel projects and pushes down the cost of climate solutions. And as an example of this, I show here on this particular chart the costs involved in producing energy from various different sources. The big outlier you see there on the right is the dramatic fall in the cost of solar, which has occurred in the last 10 or 15 years because investors like charitable organizations or Catholic organizations have put money into solar before other people would, which has driven down the costs to such an extent that in many parts of the world, solar is now the cheapest form of electricity production. The third point I'd like to bring home, and hopefully this chart will demonstrate it, is that investors always seem to overestimate the impact that a fossil fuel-free policy will have on their portfolio. Our portfolios are all now completely fossil fuel-free that we recommend to our clients. And here we analyze the performance over the last 5 years between a fossil fuel-free policy, the red bar, and the policy that we had prior to going fossil fuel-free. As you can see, very, very little difference. The difference is extremely marginal over each of the years. And we think that's likely to continue into the future. Unless, of course, the stranded asset issue really comes to the fore, then a fossil fuel-free portfolio will likely outperform a unscreened portfolio very strongly. The green line shows world equity markets. So as you can see, it's possible to outperform strongly even with a fossil fuel-free portfolio. The next point I'd like to mention to you as well, and people seem to forget this, but the fossil fuel-free or the divestment side is a very important first step. But it is only the first step if you really want to have a really strong positive climate impact. And what you really should be thinking about as well is how can we invest in solutions? So we put some of the things here that we have experience of: investment in wind farm, investment in solar, investment in hydro, all clean power sources that help reduce emissions, but also carbon sinks like plantation forestry. It's extremely important as a source of emission reduction, or something that will draw carbon out of the atmosphere and help to reverse climate change if we can do it in sufficient quantities. And then the final point I'd like you to leave you with as well today is measuring of impacts. If you're going to do it, you should really be measuring it. There's plenty of tools out there that you can look at your portfolio and see exactly how you're doing. So one of the things I show here is our typical client portfolio versus an average portfolio, how much CO2 emissions are being produced. And we're roughly about a third of what an average portfolio that doesn't have any fossil fuel-free investment included in it. So it's very possible to have a dramatic decrease in your CO2 emissions if you structure your portfolio properly. Similarly, fossil fuel reserves, zero across the board for us. There's blue is our client portfolios, and as you can see, there's no actual reserves in any of our client portfolios. And one thing we think is particularly important: renewable power generated. The portfolio that we recommend produces 30 times the amount of renewable power per $1 million invested in comparison to the average balanced portfolio. So a very strong positive impact is possible without sacrificing any return if you structure your portfolio properly. So in conclusion then, just to mention, there's a very strong long-term investment case. There's a very limited impact on past performance from what we're seeing from our review of our own performance. And of course, moving to a divest-invest portfolio has a positive impact on the world. I just leave you with a quote from George Monbiot. It's something that really struck me when I read it a number of years ago, but I think it's the most important thing I've seen on the whole issue. And he had said that curtailing climate change is the project we must put before all others. If we fail in this task, we fail in everything else. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Ian. Thanks for giving us that overview, and based on the real and practical experience of L&P on the financial case for divesting, and also drawing attention to the need to focus also on investments in climate solutions. I think we'll probably come on to that in the discussion. She's been in that role, I believe, for just a few months at this stage, as a new position. She has 22 years of experience working with FOXIV, where she was responsible for campaigns on sustainable lifestyles and climate justice. And she has a master's in political science. And Cecilia is going to talk to us today and bring us right up to speed on the Catholic Divest-Invest movement. After the conference in January, what are the next steps going forward for the Catholic group working on Divest and Invest? Cecilia.
Can you hear me? Okay, good evening, good morning, everybody. Thanks, Lorna. What the next steps? The first step is to hear from the Gospel the sense of our announcement. And isn't the Gospel when say, what I say to you in the darkness, speak in the light. What you hear, we spread, proclaim on the housetops. And please read it in the silence. So really, for our Catholic organization or religious institutions, the first step is to pray, to ask the Holy Spirit inspiration. Rabbi, I want to see, has to be our prayer. And as Pope Francis told us in the public audience, in the general audience on the 1st February 2017, divest, I think it's a way to respond with determination to the cry of the hurt and the cry of the poor, and to do it together. So we hear the cry, and it says that, as also Cleona in her presentation told us, the urgency of climate crisis is huge, and it is a severe injustice towards the poor. Divestment is about responding to the Pope's call in Laudato Si to accelerate the transitions away from fossil fuel. I don't repeat what is in the PowerPoint because my English is so bad, you can read better. And divestment is also about responding to the appeal from Catholic bishops from all continents to put an end to the fossil fuel era, as in COP21 statement. So why divestment? What is divestment? We have heard some about it, so I go fast, but it's a strategy. Investors move that money out of corporation engaged in industry, and also is an important tool in exerting pressure on world leaders, and also to redefine society moral code. And is also something that not in practice that are degrading our planet. So we put attention on the way money is being invested, and all these issues are very important. And after, if there are some questions, we can go deeply. So about the important step we have in front of us is the 50 May 2007 divestment announcement, because our movement encouraged Catholic institutions to announce its divestment commitment together as a joint announcement in key dates to increase the visibility of the cause. And of course, the ethical integrity being shown by this decision as intrinsic value. much of the beneficial impact is in the prophetic message such a decision send to the broader society. Making such a decision public progresses them from the sphere of private morality to the prophetic. So the public is very important, that the announcement is public. We know there are some religious orders that they already divest, but they consider it something to take private. But the public announcement is really a prophetic step, very important. And so the first joint announcement took place in June 2016 at anniversary of the release of Laudato Si. Several institutions joined it, and the second one was took place on October 4th, 2016, on the occasion of the feast of St. Francis of Assisi. And what we ask to the religious order and institution to make a commitment, and to make this commitment for the 5th May divestment announcement. And it's simply required your organization to make a commitment to divest from fossil fuel extractive companies to join the announcement. And here you can see the announcement of the Columban Superior General. So if you can read, it's a very simple and strong announcement. And it is very important also to underline that organizations that commit to divest can complete the divestment process in 5 years to be a fossil-free organization. So don't be worried about it. The important thing is to take the decision and to begin this process to complete the divest in 5 years, and you have not does not need to wait until it is on the way to being implemented. It can happen as early as when the resolution is passed. So take the decision in your organization and announce it. And we are available for in-person or remote meetings, but because of course there are a lot of important questions and particular questions, and to share the divestment guidelines and for further clarification. And just to finish with this picture, I don't know if the English translation is right, but divest is for me is the rudder movement required to tack on the sailing boat and changing the boat course. We know on the Laudato Si the important to change course. Thanks, Cecilia.
Thank you, Cecilia. It's great to have that overview, and also I think the practicalities at the end on how do we move forward. So the May 5th as the next announcement of Catholic institutions divesting, and also your clarification around what actually needs to be done in order to commit to divestment, and then the time frame that is then allowable in order to implement the commitment. So by divesting, it's about a commitment towards the direction of travel, and I think your image of the rudder is actually very, very good. Our final panelist, and the questions, please give your questions in. There are quite a few questions coming in already. Our next and final speaker is Yossi Kadan, who's the Global Divestment Senior Campaigner at 350.org. And prior to his current role in 350.org, he was Campaigns Director at Greenpeace Greenpeace Canada for 8 years. And he's going to set our work as Catholic Divest-Invest within the context of the global divestment movement. You're very welcome, Yossi.
Thank you very much, Lorna. And just let me 1 minute to upload my presentation. And hello to everybody. So I would like to speak about the global divestment mobilization and give you the opportunity to just hear about that and hopefully have you all working with your institution and joining this event. So what is the Global Divestment Mobilization? So on May 5th to 30th in May, thousands of people around the world, and it's really thousands of people around the world, because when we had the Global Divestment Mobilization in 2015, we had about 60,000 people in about 600 different events taking part in different parts of the world. And basically pushing for divestment or doing events in solidarity with divestment, depends on their places and their progress in the campaign that they're running. So this is what we do, and this is what we want to have the Global Divestment Mobilization. It's also having a day like that when we come together, do a few things. One, it shows the power of the movement, and it speaks to the people who are making decisions. The second, it's an opportunity not to feel alone in your campaign, and to connect with other people in other different places who are doing the same work. There is a lot of opportunity to learn and to train, and etc., etc. So it is a great opportunity to come together and protest for the things that we believe in. We are calling for people to take actions regardless of their involvement in the divestment campaign. So we do have in many places more than campaigns. We have people arranging vigils. We have people doing different type of activities, or even just the solidarity activities if they don't have any active divestment campaign in their area. And I think that was mentioned before. The aim of the divestment is not so much about to shift, I would say, or to bankrupt the fossil fuel industry. That's probably possible, but it will take too much time, and we don't have the time. Our main reason for divestment is to break the stranglehold of the fossil fuel industry on our politicians and our society, so our politicians can make decisions that align with the Paris Agreement and even the 1.5 degrees, and move on to reduce fossil fuels. So that's the main reason for the divestment. And so why we do that now? As I said, it's an annual celebration, although we didn't have a Global Divestment Mobilization in 2016. The last one was in 2015, but we definitely are planning to continue to have this day on an annual basis from this year and forward. Every time when we do this Global Divestment Mobilization, we try to find a topic to unite the work that we are doing. So in this year, if you're participating in 2015, it was all about the carbon bubble, about the stranded assets. And now we want to talk about the moral case. We want to talk about the impact of fossil fuels and climate change on different communities. And I do think that as faith leaders and faith people in different places, that's something that definitely is close to you. It's completely in line with our values, because with the call for care for people on the margin of society, it's fundamentals in living out our mission as followers of God. So what can you do? As I said, I mean, like, there is no limit on what can you do. You just have to go to the globaldivestmentmobilization.org site and register your event. And it can be anything. It can be a film or a movie screening in your house, on a community center, or whatever you choose. It can be a workshop about divestment, explaining what is divestment to people and how you actually move on divestment. It can be even a party. If you want to do a party and talk about divestment and highlight divestment, that's also completely acceptable. As I mentioned, any form of participation depends on your region, depends on your abilities. It depends on the number of people that you can get. Everything is count, and everything is important, as Ian mentioned before. And all what you do is just basically go to the global site, globaldivestmentmobilization.org, and click on register and register your events. And from that point, our people will get in touch with you, give you the information about the different resources that are possible. We'll give you the information about different workshops that are happening in different places. So it's easy, very easy to join. And as I said, I mean, like, we want to see more than 600 events that we saw in 2015. So what we offer? We offer webinars, and there are, I would say, probably around 40 webinars that's running in different places in Europe, in sort of East Asia, in New Zealand, in Australia. No matter where you are, there are webinars that explain and give some information about the global divestment mobilizations. We offer trainings for people. We offer visuals that you can basically cut and paste and use it for social media. So everything that you basically need to run a really good event on your place. And lastly, I want to show you a short video about the global divestment mobilization. So stay with me for a minute.
Well, I'm not a big believer in man-made climate change. Australia is the world's largest exporter of coal.
Die Veränderung unseres Klimas ist nicht mehr zu übersehen. Moi, le chaud, l'histoire moderne.
Scientific evidence remains inconclusive as to whether human activities affect the global climate.
Le même réchauffement qui atteint désormais près de 1 degré à l'échelle du globe.
Thank you very much, and back to you, Lorna.
Okay, thanks, Yossi. Thanks for that, setting the our work within the bigger global divestment movement. And I think you've highlighted the theme of this year. The divestment week is on the moral case, so it's one of particular interest to faith groups and to the people who are participating in today's conference call. We have 15 minutes for Q&A, and already a number of questions have come in. So I'm going to field those questions to the panelists. Yossi, the first one, I guess, is for you. It could be to any of the panelists, but it's from Sister Jean Swilinski, who is asking about, I'll read the question. I see major fossil fuel companies still making huge profits, even with divestment. Do our divested stocks just get bought up by someone else? How do you measure the impact of divestment? Is there any?
So I think I mentioned that before. I don't think that we have enough time to actually be able to, I would say, bankrupt the fossil fuel companies. They have trillions of dollars still to invest, and they have their own sort of pools of money that they use in that case. I think we can do two things. I mean, like, the first thing is the most important is the political power, because our main problem is that our politicians are almost forced by fossil fuel companies to make regulations and policies and whatnot. And we see now the most extreme example when we have Exxon basically sort of running the State Department in the US. which is probably the most. So our the divestment movement is about saying no to this industry and make sure that we are weakening this industry to the point that they're not having a stronghold on our politicians, so they are free to make those decisions that we all need. The second thing that I think it's happening, and it's still, I think we do have an impact on the financial, because I think investment is, it's also about, you know, not just about sort of the money that you move. It's also about the perceptions, and I think we create, and it's important to create the perceptions that this industry is not legit anymore, and in the long term, that's going to affect also the bottom line of these companies.
Okay, maybe you could also kind of give an answer to that one briefly, Ian. Do our divested stocks just get bought up, or do you see a movement in the investments as a direct result of divestment?
Yes, there's a certain amount of stock that would be in the world stock markets that would change hands all of the time, but probably a more relevant question or more relevant answer to the question would be about the costs that I alluded to earlier. There'll only be as much stock out there as there are oil projects. Oil projects will only go ahead when they're economically viable and it makes economic sense to do so. It's interesting to see, because of the fall in costs in alternative fuels, so things like solar, things like wind, biomass, in many parts of the world, they are now more cost effective to generate electricity. For example, in Saudi Arabia, which is probably the best example, it now costs twice as much to generate electricity from oil than it does from solar. So solar is the logical choice there. And that's really, for me as a financial person, what I think will be the solution to climate change, if we can arrive in time at it, is to try and get the costs of the alternatives lower, try and get the price of fossil fuel projects higher, and therefore any kind of rational economic person, not somebody who's morally motivated, but somebody who's just financially motivated, won't even consider going and investing in fossil fuel companies. And that's really happening all of the time. I showed the price of solar dropping dramatically. You could show a similar chart for other renewable energy type investments. So every word that we speak at these type of conferences, every person who has a further education, a further view of this, everyone who hears something new about this, starts asking questions of their pension provider or their charity, every single euro or dollar or pound that comes out of a fossil fuel project and goes into a renewable energy project alters those costs and has a real positive impact. And I think if we can get enough of that movement going, if we can continue to get that flow of money moving from fossil fuel companies and into climate solutions, then economics will actually solve this problem for us, rather than all the other things. Yes, all of those things have a contribution to make, but I think the solution really will be economic. If we can make the climate solutions the economic choice for people, that will be the solution for us.
Great. And another question for you, Ian, relating to the funds themselves. How widely available are fossil-free funds? And could you provide a list of the funds that you talked about in your talk?
Yeah, it's something that's becoming more and more available. When we first started out, we're doing this over 10 years. We had to do our own funds at the start because there were so few solutions available. We had to put together our own climate projects. It's now thankfully becoming more prevalent that you can find fossil fuel free equity investments, or you can find funds that do have a positive impact and do have a very strong investment return associated with them as well. So the trick is not necessarily finding the funds, but finding the funds that actually give you the returns you want, as well as having the positive impact. So you're doing well and doing good at the same time from your investments, rather than, you know, a lot of people have this idea they're sacrificing something out of it. We certainly wouldn't think that. In many ways, climate solution investments are better for charities or religious organizations from a pure investment viewpoint, as opposed to fossil fuel investments, which people would, which would be kind of different to what you'd hear from a lot of people in the investment industry. So yes, we'd be very happy to have discussions with people. Anyone who wants to contact us, we can certainly have a chat with them and see. It's very difficult for us to list funds. We're regulatory obliged to make sure that anything we say to people is appropriate for them. But we're very happy to have a discussion with anyone who is interested and see if they what we would provide is suitable for them.
Okay, great. Another question has come in. I'm not sure whether this one's for Clina or for Cecilia, or could be for Josie as well. But it relates to, it's from someone called Augustine Ricard Caquito, and he's asking around the situation of renewable energy in Africa, and what role the Catholics in Africa can do to contribute towards the Divest-Invest movement. Who would like to take that? Who has more knowledge of the African context?
I can certainly address that if suitable. We have a number of different investments that we've done in the African continent, and people do approach us consistently actually now at this stage. Africa is an area that's extremely ripe for renewable investment. Abundant sunshine in particular means solar is a fantastic investment there. And a lot of parts of the world, particularly in Europe, we have government support that is needed to make solar viable, which makes it a very good investment. But in Africa, in most countries, that support isn't even required. So there is a lot of people that are actually starting to look at this from a pure investment viewpoint. So Africa investment in renewables is a very hot topic at the moment. A lot of people are very much looking at it, and there's a lot of options now becoming available for investors who are looking to invest in that. If you are in Africa and you're part of a religious organization and you'd like to see more of that, again, it's all about awareness, it's all about discussions, it's all about talking to investors and seeing if they can make the transition from fossil fuel companies to climate solutions. So if you're interested in that, or if you're in Africa, see if you can divest or put in some money into those type of things, or talk to your leadership or whatever it might be, to ask them, are they doing it or can they do it? Because there is a lot of investments available now that are putting some money into those type of things. And just to mention as well, we don't really talk about this from an investment viewpoint, but the benefits, particularly in Africa, of going into renewable power rather than fossil fuel are enormous. You don't need a fuel source, particularly for solar, for example. You don't need a fuel source. You don't need a grid. It's not centralized power production. It literally is power for the people. So it's extremely democratic, and it's extremely beneficial for local communities as well. So there's an opportunity in Africa to leapfrog the whole mistake that we made in the developed world, bypass fossil fuels entirely and move to renewable power. And certainly something we hope to see more of in the future.
Great, thanks. I know that Clina wants to come in there.
Thanks, Lorna. Just to add to what Ian was saying, so there's the investment side of what can be done in Africa to contribute to the Divest-Invest movement. But I think Augustine's question is really important for Africa, but also other regions where poverty eradication really is a primary pressing issue. And there's a lot of concern in civil society in general, but including among faith institutions and the Catholic Church, about a perceived conflict between the need for drastic decarbonisation and staying away from fossil fuels, but also the perceived potential and imperative to benefit from indigenous fossil fuel resources, for example. So that drive to exploit the coal reserves that are there, exploit the oil reserves that are there, etc. So there's a really important role and important conversations to be had with stakeholders, including Catholic stakeholders in Africa, to understand the risks and opportunities involved here, the risks around going down the pathway, the mistakes that were made by other parts of the world, as Ian said, and the opportunity of going down the sustainable route, the accessible route, the route that can not only provide renewable, sustainable energy into the long term, but also accessible energy for people who currently don't have access. And I think it's possibly a bigger conversation that needs to be had, but I'm sure the GCCM Divest-Invest Working Group could really facilitate a conversation between those who'd be interested to have these kind of conversations and what we could do together about them.
Thanks, Cliona. There's a question here for Cecilia around the conference. Will the videos or transcripts of the conference in January be made available? Do you have any update on that?
Yes, we are working on it. Sorry for the delay, but we'll put everything on the website as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thanks, Cecilia. And just a final question here before we wrap up around would the Catholic climate movement encourage Catholics and Christians to invest in green political parties as an investment for the future, divesting our votes from traditional political parties? And would this have a positive impact on green policies becoming mainstream and solutions? Anybody want to take that question? It's provocative. Josi.
Yeah, I think it's sort of about contribution, not investment at this point. So it's kind of a different. When you invest, you're looking for return, and when you support a political party, you're looking, you know, to not to invest, but sort of to put your money when you think is the right thing to do. Whether you should do that or not, obviously that's sort of up to everybody, but definitely having a strong political, you know, as strong as possible political force that will, you know, try to drive policies and regulations to avert climate change. This is, I would say, probably one of the top priorities, probably the top priority of our generation, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I think you've just ended nicely there on the note of the priority. It brings us back to the quote that that Ian put up from George Monbiot around the importance of tackling climate change as the #1 project that we need to address, because without tackling this, everything else that we do is put in jeopardy. I'd like to thank our panelists for this afternoon's discussion. So thank you to Cliona Sharkey. I think, Cliona, you gave a really good overview for people who were not able to attend the conference, and we look forward to seeing the transcripts and being able to watch the videos in due course. Thanks to Ian for that excellent overview of the financial case, and several people have asked for Ian's slides, so we'll find a way to make those available to people who were on the conference call. Thanks to Cecilia for giving us a good overview of what's next for Catholic Divest-Invest, and especially the date of the 5th of May, which is the next Catholic Divest-Invest announcement. So anybody who's on the call who is considering divestment, there's a deadline for you, the 5th of May, if you want to be part of the next round of divestment announcements. And Cecilia gave us a good indication of what's required, a simple statement of intent. It doesn't mean you have to have everything lined up by the 5th of May, but you express your solemn commitment, and then you have an amount of time to enable that to happen. And then finally, thank you to Josi for your overview of the global divestment movement and the week of action that's coming up on the 5th of May, from the 5th to the 13th of May. And the theme there is around the moral case. And there, from what you said, there's something all of us can do, whether it's doing something in your own house, whether it's something you do in your local parish, your diocese, to move the debate forward, to open the discussions. We look forward to a really successful global divestment week, and we look forward to remaining in touch with all of you. So thanks very much for taking part, and thanks especially to all those who've participated in this webinar, and we look forward to remaining in touch, and God bless.